maybe I'm idealizing these times a little too much just because I was younger and I miss everything about it, but for me, one of the most awesome things about watching the show as a fan back then was just all the funny, crazy stories the guests would get involved in. And the majority of guests were late teens to mid 20s. Some were older, of course, too. But so yeah, you are talking born in the mid to late 70s, like towards the end of Gen X. I think I'm Gen X. I mean, there are some things that say I'm a millennial. I don't think I am, though. I mean, I have some traits of it for sure, but I don't really think I am one. I think most 80s babies still fall into that Generation X. I don't think real millennials begin until the 90s, but that's another story. But yeah, no, but watching everything unfold on Jerry was like, it was like watching a real life Kevin Smith movie play out every day. And again, to me, when I was in junior high or high school, thinking, man, that could be me in a few years. Those guys look pretty cool. I mean, some of them were dicks or whatever, but you know what I mean. It's the same feeling I got watching 80s high school movies when I was a kid and thinking, man, high school must be that fun, like the Coreys or something, or like a John Hughes movie or Back to the Future. Even if it didn't end up actually being that way, and then when I was in my early 20s, I didn't end up having nearly as many of experiences as the guests on the show had, but it was still, it's just a time, it reminds me of a time that's long over now, and that sucks. I mean, 40s by no means old. A lot of them are still pretty youthful, but it has become like the moms and dads, and the media doesn't focus on Gen X anymore, and that's a tough pill to swallow. It makes me feel a lot older and a lot more disconnected from my youth, that those people that were like, you thought they'd be, I think they're cool, but I mean, you thought that they'd be defining the youth culture forever. You thought they'd be, that it would never end, and yet somehow here it did. It's like it's like any other generation, and even the oldest of the millennials are starting to get there too. I mean, and it'll happen to them, and it's just a depressing thought. Nobody stays on top forever for very long. But that's going to be the thing that I miss the most about if Jerry doesn't come back. It's never going to go. We're never going to have another 1999 period of the show again. But for anyone that lived through it, for anyone that watched it back then, it was like the Wild West. You never knew what would happen. I mean, it's kind of, for me, the interest is kind of tied. I mean, like, as far as like Jerry personally, I'm a little more interested in the stuff from when he was young in Cincinnati, like the mayor stuff, and when he was on the news, especially the commentaries. I mean, I'm surprised there aren't more of those, haven't shown up online by this point, because they were pretty legendary locally back then. He always had something like a real quick breakdown of any controversial thing that would happen to be going on. He always knew just what to say about it, but obviously I lived through more of the late 90s being older, and I experienced more of that, and I don't know, I almost feel like I'm watching my own life, in a sense, play out when I revisit those. I didn't know the guests, they didn't know me, but it's like, it was all part of the world that's kind of now faded away, and that's hard to get